All right, so today this demo is going to be taking part of the Romero curriculum. This would be known as 7-2, so lesson 7, exercise 2. And in this instance, what we're doing is getting students to use what's called a multi-gate node. A multi-gate node allows a number of options to be laid out so that they happen in order. This is basically the heart of the particular lab that we're doing. And what we're going to do is we can have a starting point of a material on an object, and then based on an event, in this case the spacebar press, it's going to refer to the object in the world, and it's going to set the material based on every time this key stroke happens. The multi-gate is one of the nodes that can be used to control flow, logical flow. And as such, we plug that into the execution pin. It's part of the path that flows from left to right. And the sequence that's laid out here indicates, as hopefully is somewhat understandable, first time, second time, third time, and we cycle back to the start again. So the basic version of this is just a step-by-step, and I've modified it a little bit. I want students to make sure that they're including their student logo in it. Now, this is on the heels of doing some work on a lecture called 7.1, which is also working within the Unreal world here. Students, make sure that you have included your own folder called Student, which should appear here. If you do not have that folder included, you can go to one of your existing projects and find your Student folder. So in our lab, that would be looking on your home drive, in your Unreal folder, and within that, where all of your projects are, look for something where you've got your logo. It would probably be something like your name. I use the word student as a symbolic. There we go. If I right click here and I say copy. Now I want to put this into the project that I have as a current project. You can't just come into the content folder and do a paste. Boy, that would be nice. But what we're going to do is we're going to add a new folder to this, and we're going to call it student. And I spell it exactly the same. Now to find that folder, student, right here, we can right click and we can say show and explore. This will pop me out to that same spot. It showed up on another screen, but it's called student. If I go to this content folder, and I know I have a student folder, and what I'm hoping that when I do my paste here, it's going to say, you already have one by that name. What do you want to do if there's the same name? Oh, it didn't. Nonetheless, if I look in my student folder now, you can see I've got a variety of things, including snow person examples and a logo. So what I'm going to do now is just make sure that those assets show up in my project. They don't look like they're here. So we're going to reopen the project. Without having to do a save, we just reopen our project. And this is our Blueprint Lecture 7 that I think I named this one. So I'm going to look under BP 7.1. I don't know why they're showing me a nice pyramid there. I don't think I've got the pyramid in there. The thumbnail seems to be on an old project. So I'm just reopening the same project. I just changed a file reference on the outside. And what happens, my understanding is when the editor is loading, it sets up, all right, here's the folders that are in the project. And once that Content Explorer is pre-populated in our implementation, it's not a dynamic load. So now I've got things, including my Tech Campus logo. I want to make sure that I can understand this folder is important, so I'm going to actually make sure that I give it as add to favorites, so it now will pop up to the top here. And in either place, now that it's a favorite, I can actually do things like set a color, just so it stands out. And if you follow this process where you take your commonly used objects and keep it in a folder, you can move from project to project. It'll make it a little bit easier for you as thing goes on. All right, so this is just the setup. You could work, for example, in the starting point of a third person if you wanted to. I personally like using versions that are based on the VR basic level. To me, it's a little bit prettier. It does not have that 3D text. And so this is the startup that I would suggest you use for 7.2. Picking up in the Romero curriculum on 7.2, and I believe I've got this set up as a, yes, it's a Google Doc in this instance. And it's basically telling us to pick a level we've used for other blueprint exercises. You don't need to start with a fresh world. What we're going to do is make sure we've got our student folder, which we just did, and we're going to pick up here with number 2. Add a cube to the level. It's in the basics section of the modes panel. I'm just going to go through step by step. So as I get in here and I go to add in the basics and I look for cube, I'm just going to drag a cube out. There's my cube. It's just a cube in the world. You don't have to do anything else with it but set it in the world. This is my player start. And so to make sure that I can actually see it when I start, I'm just going to move it in front of my player start world position. That's not in the instructions, but and just to double check this, if I click on play, make sure I possess my player. There's the object in sight. Now that I've checked my angle, I'm going to move it so that it's a little bit closer to the ball over here. It's just a cube sitting there. All right, that should be within view. And continuing in the video now, we're just going to pick up on the next step here. In the details panel for the cube, rename it material display. So in industry, when somebody tells you what to call something, good idea to copy the word and actually use it as such. It may be part of what they call a data dictionary. It may be that it's absolutely required to be that name. So with this object in the upper right-hand corner in the world outliner, I can actually take a look at the details, and I can actually change the name of this object directly in that. Get rid of a couple of messages down here just to make sure that they go out of the way. It's just re-importing some stuff. So there is our component, currently called Cube2, and I'm just going to paste the name there. And as you do so, I now will have something called Material Display. That's the new name now. It's called Material Display. There are 2 more settings that the instructions tell you to change. So popping back into our Google Doc, just waving goodbye to the students here as they take off. We're going to want to make sure that we change the mobility to movable. If you're not sure how to find something, it's like a property such as movable, what we're going to do is we're going to search in details. We're going to look for M-O-V-E-A-B-L-E, movable. Property on this static mesh needs to be set to movable. Mobility, there it is. Make sure this is highlighted. See where it says mobility? Right there, that's what you're going to do. So now this object can be moved. It's a step there. And now with this particular object still highlighted, we're going to go into the level blueprint. To get to the level blueprint, we're going to use this drop-down box here, and we're going to open the level blueprint. I do have the code from BP lesson 7.1 here already. So if we get in here, we might see a node already. Oh no, I started with a new world, so we're good. All right, I'm not going to need to use these 2 objects. I'm just going to delete the stuff that was there. But when I right-click now, I can actually create a reference to material display. Now, the words material display sound like a really official-looking property within Unreal. This is just the name of our static mesh. And to hopefully kind of clarify that that's what it is, I've tried to highlight it in blue here. So now what we've done number 4 here, we've gone into the level blueprint, we've gone to the event graph, and we've created a reference to it. So now we're going to pick up on number 6 here. We're going to add the spacebar keyboard event. Adding a keyboard event within a blueprint slate editor, you can right-click for the context menu. And right in here where the search box is, you can start to type in keyboard. And when you get into keyboard, you'll find all of the things set up. Now, the spacebar is the chosen one, which is also typically associated with the jump in a third person. So it will actually end up doing 2 things. The player will jump, and the object will do whatever is activated here. Let's see here. I guess I should probably add the word space to the end here just to help. There we go, spacebar. That's where all the astronauts go for their drinks. They go to the spacebar. All right, this is an event. Turns red And you'll notice binary values are also read within our, as if there was a variable. So read either happens or it doesn't happen. So we've got a reference to our object, and we've got the event that's going to do something. Now, we need to add the multi-gate here, and there is a shortcut to bring up a multi-gate. So there's a very handy quick reference on Blueprints that I share with my students. I'm going to point that out. They should have saved a sample, or pardon me, their own copy of the Blueprint cheat sheet to their H drive. And I'm going to turn off the, I'm just going to scroll in a little bit here. You'll notice here on editor shortcuts for creation, if we're looking for a multi-gate, it's M plus click. So trying to highlight that here. This is the main nodes that can be created using the shortcut. So M plus click will create your multi-gate node. We're going to want to create this picture here. Here's your multi-gate mode. Let's make sure I'm being true to the instructions here. This is the Word document that came default. I'm going to jump into the Google version. They're almost the same. I tend to break things down to a little bit more like one line, next line, one line, next line, just for those students who like things more granular. All right, so we've got the spacebar event. Now we're going to add the multi-gate node. And so let's go ahead and do that. And let's see what that looks like in the current version of our engine. We're going to hold down M and click to add our multi-gate. So we're going to be taking the execution path that says when this is pressed, we're going to do the following thing. And it tells us to add one more pin and to select the loop option. So this is the next thing we're doing. We added a pin and we added a loop. There's a multi-gate. So the execution path says when you press the space bar, run the multi-gate. The multi-gate's going to do whatever is associated with each of these execution pins in order, and because we've done a loop, it will loop back. It does beg for exploration, and I would suggest that you look at the random as well. Nonetheless, let's stick with the flow of the instructions and not vary too much, because you can have a lot of fun with this. Drag a wire from the material display pin and release the mouse button. In the context menu, choose Set Material. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag a pin off. So the way that looks in the editor is when you click on something like this and you drag off. So I'm clicking, and when I drag off, now when I let go of the mouse, it brings up a context-sensitive menu. I'm looking for Set Material for a static mesh component. So for the set material, that pin's locked in, the material right here, this is the parameter or the option that's going to be associated here. Now I'm going to cheat a little bit. I really like highlighting something in the content browser. And for example, this one's called body scale. This is a material that I created using some textures here. Used it in different projects, I've imported it. And now that it's highlighted in the content browser, there's a really cool thing you can do. At least I think it's very convenient. See where it says select asset? You could actually look for it by name. But if you've got it highlighted as I do here, you could click and drag, or this little arrow is kind of like an assignment operator to me. It means use the one that's already highlighted in the content browser. So the word body scale appears here. So we're going to wire this set material in so that it happens first. So this is the execution pin. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to want a couple more of these. So what I'm going to do to duplicate something, we can use the keystroke of Control W. So Control W there duplicated that node, and it's still a set material, and it still even has the comment. I'm going to grab the execution pin out from this one and plug it in here. Now, I've got a different material here. It's scaled differently. It looks very similar, but nonetheless, it is a different material. I just scrolled back to kind of get a better zoom on this. And so on this material, instead of using body scale, I'm going to again use the one selected. So I've got two different materials. They look very similar, but they are different, scaled differently. In the third node that I'm going to be doing, for target, I need to make sure that I've got This static mesh component is the target, just like I've wired it above. Now I need one more of these. It's going to be another set material. And so I'm just going to Control W on this one to duplicate it a third time. And I'm spacing this out a little bit broader, but the same reference, the same object is the object that I want to go to. I just happen to have an experiment here of, see, these are static meshes, not materials. This is a material I could use. I'm looking at the color down below. The green indicates it's a material, and it even says the word material on it. So now for my third version here, I'm going to use this third material. I happen to bring in a folder that has 3 materials in it. If you need more materials, you could use the starter content or the engine content. Engine content is not always displayed. If you want to see it, click where it says View Options and make sure you've indicated Show Engine Content. I'll collapse that for now, but if you were in the engine content folder and you were looking for a material such as MAT, you can find some materials. Now, some materials are not going to look great on static meshes. They're designed to be part of a heads-up display, or they have transparency, or they somehow look weird. So pay attention to the ones on the preview that look more like a marble that would be perceptible. Some of these are usable, but wouldn't necessarily serve the purpose here of just being a material on an object. So enough about the engine content. Let's get back to testing this. I'm going to make, since I've got 3 materials in place, I'm going to maximize the view and make sure that I wire in these pins. So the third pin here is going to go to this execution path, and this same reference pin is going to be brought to the target. This is orphaned right now. It's not connected to anything. It's just available to try, just like these were available to try. And they are using one spacebar to change the material 3 different times on one component. I believe that's what the lab has us do before I even try to do a compile, though I'm just going to double check myself and look at the instructions again. Compile, complete the script, play the game, press the spacebar. All right. I believe, other than the slight difference in the set material name, I have completed the assignment. So let's jump in there and see how that works. If I do a compile, I got a clean compile. You'll notice I got a checkbox here. So this is part of my level blueprint. And if I play this, possess the character using the F8 key, there's the box above. You see it? I'm going to press the space bar. The material changes. Space bar again. Material changes. Space bar again. Material changes. So my materials are changing with the space bar in a looping fashion. This is a pretty simple example. As you can see, we put in these nodes fairly quickly. We tested it. It worked. Students, I'd like you to modify this so that it serves a more interesting purpose as you would define it. And then I want you to do a video showing that you've got this work done. I hope that helps in understanding what the process is and how to get through the step-by-step. And please be expressive with your work. Thank you.